So it's been a little while since because we did them such rapid fire episodes that we didn't have much to.
I don't remember anything about how to podcast, so
I forgot. What do my hands do?
Do I sit? Do I do this?
What am I supposed to do with this?
Is this how I podcast?
Yeah.
Or like this, I think.
Yeah.
This is how we do it.
Yeah. Do I just sit like this?
Sit upright.
Do you just
bend your shoulders
straight back?
Oh,
Good posture.
God. Like literally cracked my back.
God, podcasting is hard work. Oh, I haven't sat like this in my entire life.
I need to get a better chair.
We're gonna be a hot mess tonight, aren't we?
I think it's gonna be great.
It's gonna be a great episode.
Totally great.
That's when it's the best.
Exactly.
We're a hot mess. Hey everybody, welcome to the JRPG Pursuit, your JRPG podcast about all things JRPG. I am one of your hosts, and my name is Branden.
My name is Abdallah.
And I'm Emily.
And we are just so thrilled to have you with us again on this fine day. I hope you all have had a great week so far. And we want to, of course, welcome back Emily, who has been just trotting around the globe these past many weeks. So welcome back, Emily.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, we are looking forward to hearing more about your trip. We have intentionally withheld on asking her a lot of questions because we wanted her to be able to share it all fresh here on the podcast so that you, the podcast listeners, can partake in it along with us and be as excited as we are. But because it has been so long since we sat down to record, literally like 5+ weeks.
Yeah.
We wanted to start out with talking about some of the things we've picked up most recently. So how do we want to do this? Dalla, why don't you start?
Yeah, I can do that, I guess. Let's start with something that I've been kind of playing recently. It's not necessarily in the sphere of JRPGs, but it kind of harkens to it.
Get out of
here. I'm sorry. Okay. I know we're a JRPG podcast, but here it is. I'm just going to throw it out there.
He's being his authentic self.
Exactly. I'm just going to be me on this one. But I want to talk about Astrobot. The beautiful thing is that like it is, I would say, JRPG adjacent because it does reference a lot of like JRPG characters from like old dead series that we haven't seen in a long time
that we can all mourn together.
Yeah. So it adds
Blame
a little
Sony.
Yeah, exactly. As a JRPG fan, it just kind of like makes you feel sad while you're playing it, even though you're enjoying the hell out of the game.
Also sad.
I'm not going to say who you see because that's spoiler territory.
Spoilers.
Everyone should experience it, I think. But then also like along with that, I want to say thank you to Branden especially because he came over a little while ago and he got me a little early birthday gift
Astrobot,
because I was gonna get it and it sold out and I was really sad. And then next thing you know, I hear like Branden was texting me saying, hey, like what's did you get one? And I was like, nah. And then he just showed up with
it for the audio audience.
Oh yes,
you want to tell them what it is?
Yes, for the audio. It is the Astrobot limited edition PS5 controller, and it is as a thing of beauty.
It really is.
That's what I'm playing Astrobot on using that right now. It has very
super appropriate,
very clicky buttons, more so than the other ones that I played. The other controllers.
Really?
So like it does feel
interesting.
Feel a little bit better to me at least.
Nice.
So I picked up that, and that's been something I've been kind of working through. Another game that just came in is the limited run collection for Cosmic Fantasy. It has both 1 and 2 on there, which is from the TurboGrafx CD, which is like a series I never really got into. I never played because I never had the TurboGrafx growing up, but I did watch one of the videos of Happy Council Gamer when he was like going on about it, and it made me want to play it. And so I'm just really happy that they actually translated the first game because I think we only got the second game initially for the TurboGrafx. So I think only number 2, right? I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that. I believe it was just the second one. But I'm hoping there's a collection number 2 that is out in Japan. So hopefully they'll also translate that because I think there's 4 games in the series.
That would be wonderful.
I want to say that's sold pretty well, at least in the like JRPG community. I've seen a lot of people pick it up and talk about it.
Yeah.
Saying how excited they are to finally play them. When did this come out? Like in the 90s?
Early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Okay. Probably around when I was born.
First one came out on your birthday.
Actually, yeah, it's in March of
Okay.
1990 for the first game, and then
Okay.
April 1991 for the second on the PC Engine. So not even technically the CD. But they have like a really cool anime aesthetic.
Yeah.
Very,
I dig that. I'm nostalgic for that like 90s.
yeah,
I don't know.
it's got that like old
I hear
school.
the cutscenes are really cool too.
Yeah,
So
that's what I've heard
always a
too,
plus.
and everything I've seen about it. I'm excited to dig into this as soon as possible. While I was buying that, because I bought that from video game, is it VGP?
plus,
Yeah, Video Game Plus, yes.
They're
Because I missed the run that Limited Run was doing, and then Brandon also texted me. I gotta, Brandon, you're just like coming up. You're making.
he's clutch.
I know he's coming in clutch on all these things. He was just like, hey, if you want it,
Do I have Riz? Is that am I using that
you
right?
have JRPG
Ah.
collecting Riz.
Am I Riz?
You're skibbity all over this. Okay.
Oh, I'm super skipping.
No,
Sorry, go on.
This
Go
is
on, go
awful. So I was buying that, and I was like, okay, well, I need to buy a couple more things because I was like, I get the free shipping if you pay like $80 or something like that. So I never actually picked up a physical version of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. I have it
Oh,
digitally,
yes.
and I have the PS2 version, but I never actually picked up the PS4. So they had
Nice.
this on sale for, I think it was like $11 or $12. So I was like, okay. And
Steal.
then
That's a
Dealfield Chronicle. That is,
Yeah, you can't get that wrong. It's just the one chronicle.
just-
They don't have
oh,
more.
no.
Just the single
Yeah,
chronicle.
I always found that was awkward too.
A little weird. Yeah.
you expect to say Chronicles, but yeah.
Right.
I think we've been conditioned from Xenoblade.
Yeah,
I think so.
This is true. This game, I've heard good things about it. I don't know too much. I never played it before, but I figured it was going for a good price, and I needed to add it to the collection anyway. So
Mhm.
I grabbed that.
I've
Last,
heard good things about it. It's a different type of strategy game.
yeah, it looks really cool. I think I played a demo of it on the PS5 back when it came out. So I remember thinking
That's when all the Square Enix games were coming out, and everyone.
Got buried in an avalanche.
there were so
Very-
many
Yeah.
so many games I was like trying out at that time, because there was like, I forgot what else was coming out at the same time, but there was a ton.
A Star Ocean, I think too, right? Like it's all.
Brandon knows about Harvestella, so
Parvestella
Yes.
was, I think, before that, but it was
Oh, it
there
was?
was a
Okay.
similar
Maybe
there was a
it's right before.
similar rush. There was a similar rush when Harvestella came out. So
it's true.
all these great games get buried.
Yeah,
They do.
but I think when Harvestella came out, there was like an influx of, there was like a Nintendo Direct that was like all farming games.
Yeah, it got. Yeah, I remember being.
I remember that.
Very.
Yeah. Last game though,
Or somebody upset people.
I know everyone was just like, why is there like 4 announcements for like
And now they're
farming?
upset that there's so many JRPGs and these announcements now, which I'm not upset.
I'm
but
not upset.
Hey, I'm here for
I'm
it.
all for
No,
it.
Me too.
Last one though is Blue Reflection Second Light on the PS4.
Very cool.
I wanted to get on the PS4 because it just runs better, I think.
Yeah, I get like emotional thinking about that game. I just like, oh man, I get verklempt.
Especially on the PS5,
I
I,
just love
think
that
it'll play
game.
a little bit better. Yeah, I've heard Brandon talk about it, and I picked up the 1st
Mhm.
one not too long ago, and I was like, well, I need to get the second one before it gets a little too expensive to pick up. And then I found it for a good deal, and somebody was selling it.
That's
for
good. I think that one was out of print for a while
Yeah,
Mm.
on the PS4. It was hard to find.
yeah. So like, you can't find it new anymore. So
Yeah.
I was able to find on the used market for a pretty good
Very
price. So yeah, lots of really fun things that I'll have to add to my backlog of a million games. So
Yes.
Yeah.
As you
It's all the backlog. Cool. Well, I'll go through mine quickly, and especially so because 3 of them are the same. So I also have Astrobot. It's still sealed. I have not started it yet. I'm in the middle of reviewing stuff, and I'm backed up for a couple of weeks. But I'm looking forward to playing it. I also have the controller. Funny story about the controllers. So I ordered the controller from Best Buy, and shortly before the release date, I got a notification from Best Buy saying, we're not sure if we can ship you this. Like we're trying to ship it, but we're not able to right now. It's delayed. If we can't ship it within the next however many days, we'll refund your money. And I'm like, what? Like, that's just not how pre-orders work. Like,
So sad.
that's why I paid you to it, because I wanted to not, because then I'm not buying it somewhere else, you know?
That's been happening a lot with pre-orders. Like I think
Mhm.
Walmart was doing that too, right? With some, like I think Thousand Year Door had those issues.
It's like
Yeah.
airlines overbooking flights. Like, just
Yeah.
don't do it. Just don't do it. So I was pretty upset. But then I saw on Twitter, I probably Wario64 or something, posting that GameStop was selling them if you were a pro member. So you had to be a pro member,
Of course.
to get this controller. So I was like, shoot, fine. Here's your $20 to be a pro member, and then I'm going to pre-order this controller. So I was like, okay,
You broke under zero
it.
pressure.
I pre-ordered it. It cost me an extra $20. I could, I don't know what benefits there. You don't get Game Informer anymore because they shut that down.
Do you get $5 a month allowance still?
I don't know, actually. I have to look into that.
I would look at least get your $20 back. Though,
yeah, that could be.
Who likes ordering new games from? I don't.
Not myself, no.
Especially
I mean, there is a
if they're gonna be
GameStop in
open.
my town. Yeah, there's a GameStop in my town.
That makes it easier
so
if you have a local one.
Not as big of a deal, yeah. Anyway, so I had that, and then the same day, I saw that Ant Online was doing a deal where they were selling the game with the controller for, I think it was 130. So the controller's 80. The game's normally what, 50, 60?
Yeah, $60.
It's a $60 game.
So it was a $10 savings. And I was like, I need to get the game anyway. I'm just going to order it on Ant Online. And I was like, okay, well, now I've got two coming. Like I knew, I was like, Dala was talking about how he wanted one. That could be a birthday present. I'll call it an early birthday present. But then Best Buy came through in the end. And so I had 3 of them.
Oh boy.
And somebody that my wife used to work with, that I have talked to online a few times, he saw my post about it and was like, hey, if you happen to have that extra controller, I might be interested. So I just sold it to him for what I paid for it. And so call it break even. Like, everybody's got their controller, got the game. Anyway, that's the drama of my Astrobot controller. And looking forward. Yeah, got it. So the other thing that I have that's the same is Cosmic Fantasy. This was supposed to be delivered to me by Limited Run ages ago. Never showed up. I reached out to them and they're like, oh yeah, that definitely should have been there by now. So they like fast tracked this to me. I got it in just a couple days. So that's good. Excited about that.
Good customer service for once.
Yeah, they did great. Yeah, I mean, honestly, every time I've had to reach out to them about something, they've resolved it real quick.
Oh, that's good.
Never had issues with them.
That's good.
So the another thing here is that I just finished my review on. Actually, by the time this episode goes up, it will already have been out for a couple of days. So yeah, I played through Renatus. I liked it quite a bit. Spoilers, I guess, for the review. And I know that the general consensus, I don't know if they say consensus, but like pretty divisive among a lot of JRPG reviewers. Like I was talking to Dala before you got on the call, Emily, but it was like, it seems like a lot of people in the community were like almost gleeful that it was doing poorly. Like some of the posts were like almost kind of like, haha, I knew it. I knew this was going to suck. It's like, why though? Like, why do you seem happy about this? Like, that's strange to me. I don't quite get that.
There are some developers I feel like get targeted for this sort of thing. Like, I think people just have a bad experience with their previous games and they just think they can't,
they're never going to make a game.
To look down on them. I don't know.
I guess. Yeah, maybe. So
like, even if you don't have a good experience with it, I feel like you should at least still, evaluate it fairly.
Yeah.
Open mind, and in the review, I kind of like the way I look at games is, maybe, I don't know if it's different than how most people do, or if, I don't know. But I was saying that, like, if Square Enix is Disney putting out like big budget Marvel movies that like have a ton of special effects and big stars and make a ton of money, then Furyu is like an off-Broadway production of like an original dramatic play, right? Like, you consume those two different types of entertainment the same way, like you sit and watch them, but like you would never compare them to each other. You wouldn't compare a Marvel movie to an off-Broadway play. Like, that wouldn't make sense. You'd be like, how do you, what? Like, why would you do that? So I don't know. The way I think about Furyu games is more like Broadway or like community theater. Like, there's a lot to enjoy in that sort of thing, and it's just a different thing. So anyway, Renatus.
I feel like it's worthy to at least acknowledge that there's this alternative to play, because I feel like there's so much focus on the heavy hitters, like you should only play bangers or something like that, of what people consider bangers. So it's good to have, I think, these other options to see where can this genre continue to kind of move forward, because usually like if they like Furu, they experiment a little bit, and you don't really see some other developers maybe pursuing the same thing.
Exactly,
so
and that's why you get people that are working at Square Enix or have worked for Square Enix going to Furyu and making games like Reynada's, because like Kazushige Nojima wrote it, Yoko Shimomura did the music, like the art director or whatever was one of the big Final Fantasy art directors. Like they're going off and doing this stuff because Furyu's willing to take these kinds of chances and stuff.
And they even had, the collaboration, right, with the World Ends With You. Like there was, like they saw, promise in this. Like there's a reason why they wanted to, collaborate.
Yeah.
And my fear is that if we don't find a better way to talk about these kinds of games, that the entire JRPG landscape is just going to homogenize into the same sort of AAA, same old thing. It's like you'll have indie games and then you'll have AAA games and you won't have anything in between. And that's kind of a bummer to me.
Yeah.
So,
and I usually love the little AA type games that come in between. Like you said, they like to experiment. They like to have fun. And I look forward to trying out this game. I mean, honestly, like, it looks like it's going to be, it has enough good points to it that it's worth a shot.
I would say if you've enjoyed any Furyu games in the past, it's definitely worth at least trying. There's a demo out, so
I'll definitely try the demo.
And even if you feel like you only have limited time and should only focus on the like widely acclaimed games, I think it's kind of a good way to diversify what you play by trying out these other types of games every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like a palette cleanser.
I mean, pick and choose, of course, but
you can, and like you never know. Like you try out a game that you think wouldn't be up your alley, and then you end up loving it, and maybe you discover a whole different genre that you might, you never know.
Yeah, exactly.
So one last thing I picked up, and this I picked up in Seattle while I was there for PAX West. Went to Pink Gorilla, so we met a guy after our panel named Aaron. So we were chatting with him for a while, and he's a local. So he showed us how to get to Pink Gorilla. So we went over to the nearest Pink Gorilla location. It was,
right?
Yeah, 3 or 4. There's I think the one we went to was Capitol something.
Capitol Hill.
Remember. Yeah, maybe it was Capitol Hill. So I picked up Dragon Force at long last. This isn't a brag. This is it's a mark of shame.
I'm like trying to see that
for a missing the manual, but like with them, like this is a very expensive game.
Yeah.
So this is actually a pretty decent deal.
And you saw it in person. You got to check the condition. You don't have to worry about it getting tap and shipping.
Yeah, 100%. This is one I really. It's one I really want to play. Like it's a working designs game on the Saturn. I am slowly but surely, slowly but slowly building my Sega Saturn working designs collection. I have 2 now.
How many are there?
So
total?
I don't know, 5, 6.
I don't remember exactly how many, but they only start
Shining Wisdom, Albert Odyssey, Dragon Force.
Do you guys watch? I know that they're also pursuing a similar collection. It's always interesting when people, seek out.
If you want to be the crazy collector, the Magic Knight Rayearth game that they put out is like $1,000, and there's 3 different variants. There's 3 disc variants.
I've seen that.
Yeah, so you could go crazy. You could spend a lot on really completing a working design Saturn collection.
Yeah,
so.
Saturn is very expensive to collect for in general. It's not.
It is, and it's like buying, I don't know, an icicle. Like it's so fragile.
I know.
And it's just going to disintegrate, like if you expose it to air. So like, I'm so terrified.
Those CDs are such prone to like disc rot. It's really bad.
They're so crappy. Like they just did not. They did not use good materials for these discs.
Yeah, it's very sad.
But anyway, that's it for me. What have you got, Emily?
So I had a few games come in while I was gone. I'm going to start with the JRPGs first, and one that should be familiar, at least to Brandon, is Eterna. I got this off of BGP for a steal, and I know that it's been super cheap for a while, but I wanted to grab it before they started just kind of focusing on the Switch, because now it's coming to the Switch, and I wanted to have it on the PS5. It just felt like it would probably be a better experience. I just have so many JRPGs on my Switch right now, so I'm trying to be very like picking and choosing which ones go on there versus my PS5 now. But yeah, I'm excited to see how this one goes. So I've heard, again, this is another one that mixed reviews. So I want to see what my take is on it. And then just go right along. I also got this from PlayAsia, the Baten Kados. How do you say this? Kaidos. Okay. Can I never say it right? I always hear it said so many different ways. But anyway, I had to pick this up finally. And I got the Asian English edition. I know this was also released in Europe, but the US or North America never got their own copies. And I like how Asian English editions have, the spine alignment that's similar to North America, not the centered, like
the proper spine alignment. Unlike those heathens over in the EU.
And there's no obscured, cover art in the front there.
Yeah.
That is nice.
Those ratings. But yeah, this is, of course, a Monolith Soft game. So card games mechanics I'm a little bit iffy with. I've only played a few different cards based JRPGs, most notably Kingdom Hearts, Chain of Memories, the GBA. That was way back in the day. So ready to try that again, that sort of combat. And I just think the art style for this was just gorgeous. This one also had a little bit of a controversial release because it doesn't include the original English voice acting.
Yeah.
I think they just decided to strip it, which for me is okay, unless I don't know how the combat is, if it's more fast paced or if it's more turn. Have either of you played these?
Have not dived in.
It is definitely, well, the first one I played the first one like a long time ago on the GameCube. And it is turn based.
Okay, so I feel like when there's not voice acting with that sort of combat, I'm okay. But if it's something where there's more action and you can't read the subtitles, and that too, I just don't enjoy that at all. Or that there's some sort of localization with the audio happening.
Yeah.
But so those were my JRPGs. So I'm going to go into the non-JRPG territory because I also like to collect for other genres, which I will say I am very jealous of both of yours. Astro Playroom or Astro Bot physicals. I need to grab mine. I was gone when it released.
Right.
But the first one was another VGP pickup, and this was a limited run release. I intentionally didn't buy it on limited run, just waiting for a VGP to get it because I didn't think it will sell out. And thankfully, it's still, I think, available. I don't know for how long. But that is Beacon Pines. Are either of you familiar with this one?
It's been on my Nintendo eShop wish list for like 100 years, and I keep getting notifications when it's on sale. But I'm like, I don't buy digital games. I don't know why this is on my wish list. So what is it about?
So this is kind of like a twisted storytell that I hear that if you kind of change the language of things, you could kind of change the story. I've been trying to just not read too much into it so I could kind of go in blind, but it has a really kind of cute aesthetic, but I hear it has some like darker undertones, which makes it have a really compelling story.
I must have learned something about it back in the day, which was what led me to put it on my wish list. So I don't remember anything about it.
Food for Dogs, I think, gave it a huge endorsement, which is what also put it on my radar. I had to grab that one. And I'm always happy to expand my kind of indie collection. Really kind of, I think, solid indie titles that deserve physicals, which I feel like there's just so many, limited print run games. It's hard to kind of pick and choose nowadays. They get expensive and they add up. And there's some games I don't know if they require physicals editions, which maybe that's a controversial take, but
that's what we're here for. We bring the controversy.
It's what we do.
I think it's great when, when someone's game, maybe gets a physical and they're, adamant physical collectors. I think physical's great, but there's some games I'm just kind of wondering, maybe that should have been like a combo pack or something.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, and going kind of a whole 180, I also picked up Red Dead Redemption 2, and this is another one I just haven't gotten around to. I haven't played too many PS4 games because I'd never really owned the PS4 console. I just borrowed it a few times to play Cold Steel. So I'm excited to finally kind of dive more into that discography with the PS5. I need to get one of those external solid state drives or whatever. I think to put these games on is what I hear is the thing to do.
Yeah, for the PS5.
It takes up so much space.
Yeah.
I haven't dived into that yet, but I like Westerns. So I figured this was a no-brainer.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's a great
game. I hear nothing but praise for it. And I'm probably going to pick up the first one, though, probably did that get a PS4 remaster or something? I know it's on the Switch, but I'm probably not going to get the Switch one.
I don't remember if they made a PS4.
Yeah. I want to say that they did because I think I remember them being like, oh, it's crap. They ruined the port or whatever, like always happens.
Something like that.
Yeah, there's always people complaining about it.
If I like this one, I'll probably pick up that one eventually.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, I picked up this very well-regarded Otome visual novel. And what's really cool about this release is that this has been out for years. This is Hakioki, I think is the right way to say that. And this used to be kind of 2 games or multiple games versions that they finally compiled onto a single cart for the Nintendo Switch. And this was another Play Asia exclusive from, what are they called? East Asia Soft, I believe is the publisher. And they make these really cool limited editions where if you just, I think for $10 more, you get just an art book. I think this one comes with a soundtrack and this really nice box. So it's, you always kind of want to grab these if there's a game I think you want to get and you like physical limited editions. Yeah. If you're into this kind of collections. But yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this one. This is kind of a historic otome visual novel. And so an otome visual novel, for those who may not know, is a very kind of, I guess, female-centric kind of visual novel where it's basically you have multiple like romanceable characters that you kind of pursue. And you go to these down these different routes and kind of learn more about these different bachelors or different kind of male characters. And you usually play a female. So it's a very niche genre, but I feel like it's becoming a lot more popular, especially lately. There's so many games now available on the Switch and some other places. And this used to be on the PS Vita as well as I think the PSP back in the day, just multiple segments. So now it's really cool to have it all combined on one cart.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely did not know otome was a thing several years ago. And then like in the circles that we run in, I see like I see it all the time now. So it does seem to be growing.
Yes. I think if you're really into stories and character driven kind of visual novels, it's worth checking out some of these otome VNs, even though they're marketed usually towards a female audience. There are some that are more, I think, story based and interesting. That are definitely, I think, worth looking at, including this one. From what I hear, this one is kind of an epic one that a lot of people talk about as being one of the best. Those are all my pickups for now. I'm saving the stuff I got from Japan for my own pickup video that will come out, but at some point.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil that.
Maybe the week of when this podcast airs. I'm still actually, it's kind of funny. I don't have everything with me. I shipped a box. I was traveling with my friend, which I guess I'll get more into later. But we kind of shipped a box of stuff, both of our stuff together, and we shipped it at her house. So I'm kind of waiting for my stuff to come.
Yeah, well, and speaking of that, I mean, I feel like it makes sense to just kind of transition into your trip, because we ostensibly want to talk in a more broad sense about Japanese culture in JRPGs and ways in which it is present and apparent. But I think to start that off, that conversation off, maybe Emily, just hit us with your trip. Hit us with the trip.
Yeah.
Sure. There's so much to cover here, and I will probably just limit more to the Japan leg of my trip, because I also visited South Korea and Shanghai for the first week and a half of those 35 days. So, but for Japan, I really wanted to kind of explore more of Japan, because usually people, when they visit Japan, they just do the kind of golden triangle, which is Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka. And so I went to the southern part of Japan from Shanghai. And the first kind of place that my friend and I, who I was traveling with, stayed in is an island called Yakushima Island. And this is kind of a very popular tourist destination for those who are into the Hayao Miyazaki movies. They have just beautiful just nature around the island. And in the center, there's extensive hiking kind of trails that you could go up, because it's quite an elevated island, actually, with high mountains. And one of the trails that's really popular is to an area that's called the Moss kind of forest, which is what inspired the Hayao Miyazaki movie Princess Mononoke. And so it was really cool to see that in person. It was just really beautiful, and honestly the perfect day. And I'm really glad we did that the first full day we were there on the island, because after that day is when the big typhoon hit south of Japan.
Oh boy.
And Yakushima was actually like in the middle of the worst part of the typhoon. I think it became like a Hurricane 3 kind of level. If you are more familiar with hurricanes rather than typhoons, they call typhoons, in Asia. Whereas if you're on the Atlantic side, it's usually referred to as hurricanes. And then what's it in Europe? It's called is it a cyclone or something like that? It's interesting how the different regions call, that same kind of natural disaster a different name.
That's interesting. Never thought about
that. Was my first time experiencing, a hurricane/typhoon.
Yeah, I still have not experienced anything like that myself. So
yeah, it was a little scary, I will admit, especially because we were stranded on this island. We couldn't get off the island.
Yeah, you were there for like a week, right?
We were initially there for 3 nights. But we had to extend our trip an additional 2 nights because what happened with that typhoon, it was supposed to only just kind of graze the islands and go towards Tokyo, but instead it shifted west. And so we just became the center, or just where the major part of that typhoon hit. There was just, I think one of the days, like, it rained, I think, 20 inches, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the winds, I think, went up to like 120 miles per hour or something.
Wow.
It's crazy. But thankfully, there was really no devastation I saw on the island. We were able to go out basically when it's like a few days after, the typhoon was, once it passed. And I would say the Japanese infrastructure is amazing. Like, we only lost power for maybe 24 hours of when I think it was like around 72 hours the typhoon was kind of there and just majorly there. It kind of sucked that the power went out for a couple of reasons. Because first, it was really hot and humid, so having no AC was and then also we just didn't have like running water, so we actually filled a bathtub preemptively.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I'm glad we did, but it was interesting. We were kind of like searching because we both, my friend and I, we never experienced a natural disaster like this. We're like, okay, what do you do? Hurricane. And so we were Googling it, and we kept all the windows closed, and we made sure to do a big grocery run in case we were going to be there for longer. And we made like a big batch of rice, and one of the days we just ate white rice.
Where did you say where you were staying? Like what you were staying in? Was it like
no, I didn't say.
Inn?
We did an Airbnb because there weren't that many accommodations available on the island for the time we were going to be there. But we found this really nice Airbnb on the southern part of the island, and it is kind of close to the water. But as I mentioned, the island's so elevated, there's mostly cliffs, so there was no kind of like worry really of like water getting in or flooding, maybe flash flooding from like draining from the mountain. But thankfully that wasn't an issue. And how this townhouse, which is where the Airbnb was kind of built, it was a fairly new structure, but it withheld everything. It was really, I felt pretty safe in it, so that was good.
That's awesome.
And it definitely held up, which is nice. But yeah, after the typhoon hit, the roads were cleared for the most part, and everything was kind of back and running. It was really amazing. I didn't see that much like any structures like falling or anything. No like pole, like electrical or telephone lines downed or anything. It was just, I was pretty impressed, honestly. That was an interesting part of my trip that I will definitely remember for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rest of my trip didn't have it as exciting an event as that. But after staying there, we had intended to go to some other parts of South Japan, but because the trip delayed those, we unfortunately had to skip like Miyazaki and some of those other areas that looked really nice, but maybe someday I'll go back. But then we went to Fukuoka. Initially, we were supposed to fly out of there, but we decided just to take the bullet train up there instead. Just
easier. Yeah.
It was easier, and we had bought tickets from Miyazaki to Fukuoka for that flight, but we weren't going to make it up there. So when Yakushima is really close to Kagoshima, which is the airport we flew into. And so there was just a direct bullet train, Kansen, up to Fukuoka. And I have noticed the prices for things has increased. Like the Shinkansen was more pricey than I think they used to be, even with the exchange rate.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been interesting to see what has inflated and what hasn't inflated so much in Japan. Because I've heard, or I was talking to some locals, and they were saying how like the inflation hasn't really hit them until recently for a lot of things. And definitely, I think the thing with like all the new tourism that's coming to Japan, we've seen prices rise for certain things to make up for how just poorly the yen's doing right now. But there's some things that are just dirt cheap still. Like the food was not that expensive. Like I remember it being much more expensive when I was in Japan 6 years ago. So prior to this, I've been to Japan twice, doing the Golden Triangle. Fukuoka was probably the most disappointing city we went to, which is a little sad. I think like the reclining Buddha was the coolest part. So definitely, if you go there, I would take the train out to that shrine area. But yeah, the food, we tried they're known for ramen. And yeah, the ramen, I think is it tonkatsu ramen or no? I
think it is a tonkatsu.
I don't know. Dala, you might be more familiar than I am.
The tonkatsu? Is that what you're talking about?
Tonkatsu? I think it's a tonkatsu. I think it's a type of tonkatsu.
I think it's tonkatsu.
I think they have a specific type of noodle they use. I forgot exactly which one it is.
It's very thin.
Yeah. Because there's like in that area, there's like Fukuoka and there's Hakata that do kind of similar. So I think they use like a very thin type noodle for that. And so.
Yeah. And honestly, the broth just tasted or smelled like wet dog.
Hopefully.
So it was very off-putting. Like, it was okay. I just had better ramen in other areas, and I tend to like spicier ramen too. So I think that was maybe another thing that it just wasn't for me.
Yeah, it could be the place you went to as well.
It was supposed to be one of the well-regarded ones, but I don't know.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I wasn't there long enough to try other ones. We were only there for 2 nights.
Yeah.
So maybe we picked wrong, maybe. And then another night we went to what's interesting about that city is they have a lot of these stands, like food stalls that you go to. I'm forgetting the specific name. I might need Della to chime in here. Do you remember what that name is?
I cannot off the top of my head remember the name either.
It's all right. But anyway, they're kind of known for these independent cooks who they have their stall and it seats maybe like 9 people max, and it's supposed to be kind of a communal. It's become, I think, more of a touristy thing where people just go there, you sit down and you eat kind of these little plates.
Yeah.
And so we tried that and it was okay. I think it's definitely more hyped than it should be. Yeah. If you can't tell, the most disappointing food was in Fukuoka on the trip.
Anyone from Fukuoka, we're sorry.
Yeah. We're sorry. Maybe you were having an off week. That's fine.
Yeah.
You know.
Maybe.
But I'll say that we're not planning on going to Fukuoka when we go next year. So sorry, guys, you blew it.
Yeah, but so that was Fukuoka. We didn't do too much there. And so we went to Hiroshima next. We took the Shinkansen there, and I really liked Hiroshima. And Dala used to live there for a bit, right?
I lived there for almost 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah. And it's a kind of an interesting city because of course, the devastation that happened there. They had to rebuild. And so it was a lot more modern than a lot of the other Japanese cities. But there still was plenty of history. Like I went to the Peace Park?
Yeah.
I'm going to be butchering all the names now. That was really pretty, and they had this structure that outlasted the atomic bomb. We saw that first at night, and it was very much an impressive structure, and how they lit it up was definitely, I think, a really good place to contemplate and just see how like short we kind of live here on Earth, and just to appreciate what we have. So that was, right. I think, a good thing to see. Definitely, I recommend seeing it at night. It's just beautiful, and having it reflected in the really still water that was right next to it was really pretty.
Yeah, and for anyone wondering, it's called the dome, which is the explosion, atomic dome, because like the atomic.
Okay.
And so, fun fact: I used to work within the park itself. So I worked for one of the NGOs there for nuclear non-proliferation type stuff.
So I used to see it daily.
Yeah. So when you experience it, it is exactly kind of how you describe it. So it gives you a very interesting perspective. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So I don't know, Brandon, if you're planning to go there, but I recommend it.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
I'm a fan.
I don't know what our itinerary is because I'm not allowed to plan it.
You have no say?
I'll try to make sure that I get some input into the proceedings.
I'll help you pitch it.
Thank you.
Yeah. If the dome wasn't a selling point, then definitely I'm going to butcher this name too. Is it the Meiji Shrine?
Oh, the Miyajima?
Miyajima Shrine. Yes, sorry. It's interesting because whenever you Google it, it has different names, but Miyajima Shrine, I think, is the one that people mostly use, right?
Yeah, because like the island of Miyajima. And then there's like the shrine itself has its own name, but I always
it has
forget
a different name. It starts with an S, I want to say. when it's translated.
Yes.
Anyway, that was also a super cool experience. And Hiroshima was also when we started to actually do some retro game shopping because we didn't really have that much time in Fukuoka to try. There wasn't that many like circs or book offs where we were staying. But taking the train down, there was a really nice Surigaya there that I picked up quite a few things that was cool to find, which I'll share in my upcoming pickups video. But the shrine itself on the island, you take a ferry out. And we were there on the perfect day. It was nice and sunny and just beautiful. And what's really cool about this shrine is that they have one of those arches right in the water. And depending on the time of day you're there, the tide kind of changes, whether it's going to be fully like in water or if you could walk up to it and touch it. So we got there around 2:00 when it was still had the water surrounding it, but it was starting, this tide was starting to kind of recede and become a low tide. It's just really interesting how I guess that's become kind of very much a landmark. That's, I think, definitely worth going to.
Yeah.
There's also deer that are in that area. It's a little bit different from Nara. Nara is usually the place most people talk about deer, and it's around the Kyoto, Osaka kind of area. But the deer here were very, I would say, they weren't aggressive, but they definitely had pointier antlers than the Nara ones. So you had to be a little bit more careful around them.
I was going to ask you how aggressive they were there, because they'll get into your food, they'll get into everything, they'll reach into your pockets. Like, it's funny. They have no fear.
Tourists, like, they set their like Starbucks or whatever, their little lattes down or their drinks, go off, take a photo in front of like the arch there. They'll just get into there. They'll be scrambling, trying to say no, but you can't really tell the deer no because it's, big. And anyway, they're pretty interesting. And it's also the first time I've ever seen deer on a beach, because they were on the beaches too.
Oh wow,
that's true. They go everywhere.
They were everywhere.
Yeah.
And then the little touristy kind of areas with all the little shops was really cute. And definitely, I think the thing to get there is the maple shaped cakes.
Yeah, it's called.
Which I was expecting them to actually taste like maple in the center. They actually don't fill them with maple,
but they do have a lot of different flavors.
I feel like they're missing out. Like, they should have had a maple flavor. Is that not popular in Japan?
What are they called, Dala?
They're called momiji manju. So manju is the type of cake. Like, it's usually like a filled like with something, and momiji is the red leaf, maple leaf. But yeah, the maple is not like a very like they're not big on maple like flavoring.
Surprising.
I think. I don't think I ever crossed.
I
mean, yeah, it's wonderful, but yeah.
At least they had chocolate, because they usually the default filling for a lot of those type of things in Japan is the red bean paste, which is an acquired taste.
It's very chalky.
It is. It's, as I'm someone who likes sweets, so it's definitely doesn't hate my kind of sweet buds or sweet taste buds enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could eat. They had so many different applications for those cakes. Like, you get them deep fried or baked. Like, it was really interesting how all the little different areas they had.
Oh yeah.
A different way to experience them on a stick or your hands.
Now, did you get some oysters though?
We did not get oysters. I probably should have. I don't know about oysters. I just feel like it's just weird that you have to swallow them.
Well, they make them. You can get like
swallow them whole.
You can get them baked or fried or things like that there. But
that's true.
They're known, like, they do a lot of oyster farming in that area. So they're massive. They're like the size of a hand sometimes.
Yeah. They actually had these little mascots, which my friend and I were like, what are these little mascots of? And they were of oysters. They're like these like white blobs. They look really funny.
It's Japan loves their mascots.
Honestly, everything has a mascot.
Oh, 100%.
Even the little construction worker signs, they have little mascots of animals.
It's the country of mascots, basically.
Honestly, yeah.
Every town has one. Every everything. It's wild.
Yeah, and the ICD cards, I had to get mine in Fukuoka. They have like, I forget what the little icon on it for that one. It was like it's not the meerkat one. It was like some other animal like that. So it's a little dorky.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah. So that was that part of the trip. And then just briefly, because this is taking a long time, sorry.
That's all right.
Then we went to, after that was Osaka, which we stayed there for a few times. And that was the area that felt the most dense to me with tourists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think most of the tourists were kind of gravitating towards there rather than you would expect in Kyoto and Tokyo to be more overrun with tourists. No, it was Osaka when we were there, which was interesting, especially at night. we didn't do too much night stuff there, but that was also I think a pretty good hub for retro game hunting. It was a bit of a mixed bag, which my whole trip was a little bit of a mixed bag, which I'll get more into later, but I found some pretty good things there. We went to the aquarium, which is the second time I went. Definitely worth going to. I think it's a really cool design, how kind of spiral around this big tank basically. And I think one of the coolest aquariums I've been to. I haven't been to the Monterey Bay one in California for a long time. That's usually also considered a really good one. I haven't been there since they remodeled, but anyway, Osaka was cool. And then Kyoto, that one is I think maybe my favorite city of the ones I've been to, and I'm not really sure why. I think it's because it's just surrounded by so many beautiful shrines and different places to kind of get away from, the hustle and bustle of the main downtown area. But that one, again, it didn't feel too overrun with tourists when I was there, which was great. And plenty of good food. So definitely recommend Kyoto on everyone's itinerary to Japan. And then lastly, we went to Tokyo for a few nights there. And that's where I also experienced my first ever fireworks festival, which was pretty cool. Nice. How to get out there was a bit of a story, which I will maybe save for later. Because again, I'm probably taking too much time in the segment. But definitely Tokyo, I think, has so many different interesting areas and things to see, especially if you are into, more of the modern Japanese culture of like anime or games and stuff like that, and just shopping. We mostly spent our time shopping in Tokyo because I've seen most of the historical kind of sites from my prior trips. But yeah, that was my Japan trip in condensed.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
A whirlwind tour, literally at some points. Very cool.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll have to get your recommendations for specifics. I have to have you write them down for me because I'm not going to remember what you said, so that I can present that to the governing body of my trip next year, which is basically the other 3 people that are going and not me. So I'm leaving it to them to plan.
Yeah, and
then Dala, you're shipping out in a few days.
Yeah, Friday around noon is my flight to Tokyo. So mine's not going to be as much of a whirlwind of like all these different cities, but I'll be mostly focused in on like one night in Tokyo, a couple nights in Osaka, and then going over to Okinawa, which is like the tropical island that's part of Japan now. That's south, like 2 hours south of Tokyo and others. Osaka mostly. I'm flying out of Osaka for that, but
it's like the Hawaii of Japan, right?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, you go there, you can get like spam musubis, like it's very like Hawaii vibes, as you say. So like, it's a really cool place. One of my close friends is out there. This is more or less a trip to see some old friends, since it's been a long time since I've been out there. So it's less about tourism, but more of just going to catch up with people.
Catching up with people, yeah.
But also like doing a little bit of shopping on the side if I can. Hopefully find some stuff.
Do you think the island has a lot of places?
They do have like...
Because Yagashima Island had 0.
Well,
when it comes to shopping.
Okinawa is big enough. It's like big enough with a big enough city there that it has like book offs, it has hard offs, it has things like that. So like I'll be able to... I'm hoping to get some good deals at one of those. And it's not like a typical place like Tokyo. So you're not getting as like, let's say, video game tourism, as I would call it, where like Tokyo's like... people cater to that.
Westerners driving up the prices.
Yeah, exactly. So like you get tourists to Okinawa, but it's not for that specific case.
It's the Japanese tourists mostly.
Yeah, a lot of Japanese tourists, and then a lot of military people from the US, because there's a huge military base there in Okinawa. And funny thing is that I didn't realize that, but I'll be in Tokyo one of the nights of Tokyo Game Show. So
nice. I
was like, I should have.
You should sneak in.
I should have.
I mean, get it.
I'll try to infiltrate. I'll try to infiltrate its location and
give us a live report.
See if I can get some FaceTime with anybody.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I'll get them on the mic. We'll do a special like live podcast that day.
Well, that's fantastic. I am, like I said, I'm very happy, Emily, that you had a good trip and that you didn't get blown away. And Dala, I'm excited for you to be able to go, and then I'm excited for me to be able to go at this point, like almost, I guess it's like 10 months from now. So that's not forever. It'll fly by.
Definitely will.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You're going at a good time of the year where it's not going to be blazing hot. Humid.
Yeah.
I definitely picked probably the worst time of the year, especially with all these natural disasters happening back to back.
You got double, triple whammy of all that stuff for you. Yeah, but at least you still had a good time, so that's good.
Yeah.
So Japan, right? Like, I mean, growing up with JRPGs, Japan really didn't factor into it. Like, I knew at some point when I probably as a teenager that these games were from Japan, that Nintendo was a Japanese company, that Squaresoft was a Japanese company. But the Japanese-ness of them didn't really register with me. Some of that might have been localization, where they used to a little more like, I don't know, they would localize some of the local flavor out of it, some games. So like, I don't even know how much they would have had to do that with a game like Final Fantasy 3 or something. Like, it was a pretty...
There's a good example of that. I'm trying to remember the name, which game it was, but they would always remove any reference to rice balls, and they would call it...
Was that Earthbound?
I think it might have been Earthbound. And there's like, I think it was like a lot of like, there was like a couple of games back then that like would reference or like rice balls, and they would call it something completely different. And I don't remember what it was, but it was like something always some kind of slightly silly. And then when you...
I know what you're talking about. I'm not 100% convinced now that it's Earthbound, but I think I know what you're talking about. But yeah, anyway, like, and then, games that took place in modern day settings, there weren't a ton of them back then. There was Earthbound, but that was very specifically set up to be like an American-esque sort of world. So even though it was a Japanese game, it was modeled after that. So it really wasn't until, for me, probably not until like the PS2 era that I even started to really be aware of like Japanese, like the straight up actual Japanese influence on these games. And even calling it influence feels a little weird because like they're Japanese.
Exactly.
Like they're from Japan. So yeah, I don't know, like what was y'all's experience playing these games, and like when did it sort of dawn on you that you were playing Japanese media?
Yeah, I think
for me, I was, I guess, a few years after you guys, but so definitely the PS2 era is when I noticed it, and part of that was because we had some kind of weird, wacky games coming out. So like, I think the weirdest one that I remember thinking, oh, this is such an odd game, was Katamari Damacy.
Oh yeah.
It's just that concept was like, this is wild. What is this? And then I think after watching like X Play for a bit, which I used to watch G4 back in the day.
I think we all did.
And how they would point out something's like very Japanese, and they're frankly pretty racist about it back then. But that's one that kind of, I realized like, oh, this is from a different country and different culture. And I think Persona 3, 2 was a big one where they would shoot, themselves in the head to get their personas out. And it was just very eye-opening as a teenager. When I started kind of understanding that, because back in the day, I used to play, Pokemon, I watched Digimon and Sonic the Hedgehog on TV. Like, I consumed a lot of Japanese media and like Sailor Moon. So a lot of Japanese culture things in that respect just seemed normal. Very normalized, I think, when I was a kid growing up. But then I started to see more of kind of weird, Japanese kind of influence on games that you didn't really see in some of the other games that I was accustomed to, that were more, I guess, Western titles.
Yeah, that makes sense, because like it probably didn't dawn on me until like I was probably in my like late middle school, probably like around 8th grade, 9th grade. That's probably around the time where I started to watch more, like I branched out in like even in the anime scene, like watching things that I was like not necessarily always watching. Like it wasn't just the typical Dragon Ball Z's or things like that. Like I had some friends who got me into like, things that were kind of more like slice of life and those things. And that kind of like shed some light on like, okay, like to kind of more cultural tendencies that you didn't realize. And so like you can like looking back at it, you look at games like even how like games are written, and from a perspective of like, let's say even Final Fantasy 7, and how like, why doesn't Tifa say anything to Cloud ever about like his things that he says that are just like
spoilers.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure most people have played who are listening.
Well, I'm not going to get into any details of that, but I'm saying like, why wouldn't she like talk to him about anything? And it's like, it's a kind of a cultural perspective of like, they don't like to point at issues or talk about things like that. So it's very like kind of held back and kind of things like that. So like, it's interesting how that kind of like, plays into that.
That's a really good point. The writing and the characterization, because I remember thinking, and I'm not sure which specific games, but like characters bowing in games, and I was like, why are they doing that? Like, that's weird. Why would they like full on bow at each other? Like, that's so strange.
Or
like,
kneel on the floor too if they are trying to repent something.
Right. I'm like, I was like, this is so strange to me. And that's the sort of thing that, like, even if you wanted to localize that out of it, like Americanize it, like you can't really without fundamentally changing the animation, and that wasn't something that was easily
black
done
out that
back
screen.
then. Right. Yeah. So it's like that stuff just stays in. And they either write an explanation for it, or they just hope that your stupid little kid mind doesn't notice or care. But I definitely remember being like, that's strange. Like, why would they do that? That's so weird.
Yeah. That happened like looking back at it, like I can't quite pinpoint which games, but there was like a lot of different like scenes like that where you just look back and you play them if you're replaying a game from your childhood, and you're just like, I never noticed, like, or I at least I noticed it, or my brain just did not register it at the time, because they never like actually like expressed anything in those moments, so it's kind of just like overlooked.
There's no explanation for it. It's just there. And for like the original audience, it's totally like,
makes sense.
That's nothing. It's totally normal. And for us, it's like,
what is that?
Maybe at first it's weird, but then it becomes normalized. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't think it takes too long to get used to it, because the game doesn't make it, some big old thing you have to, recognize. Like, this is different.
Yeah.
And we're so impressionable, I think, as young people. Like, maybe we just didn't, know that that's how people act. And so we just think that's normal too. I don't know.
Yeah. And a lot of characters were exaggerated too. So like it could be just an exaggeration of a character.
It's true.
Or I know that I would, for some of these sorts of things, I would kind of headcanon some stuff like, oh, in that world, that's just something they like. I would think things like that, where it's like, oh, then I kind of offer myself an explanation for it. And I might even still do that, like, even knowing now that it's Japanese. It's like, in the world of, say, I don't know, Final Fantasy VII, that's not Japan, right? That's a fantasy world with different kinds of people in it. So the Japanese tendencies that those characters have, like, canonically, that's just tendencies that the people in that world have. So it's actually kind of easy to, I don't know, make believe that it's something, that's just part of that world, and it's not weird because it's just part of that experience in that world.
Yeah, I could totally see compartmentalizing, that type of thing. Something you could do. I don't know. I think I grew up with a lot of loud cartoons, so a lot of those kind of anime stuff just seemed, an easy transition for me as a kid. So it never really seemed that different for me. I think a lot of the quiet stoicism that you see in a lot of Japanese media was maybe what caught me more off guard. And especially female characters. A little bit more of showing that kind of inner strength that's like the quiet strength, which I thought was refreshing too as a kid. Yeah. Because usually I think back then that's when a lot of like kind of girl power, Powerpuff Girls, was kind of big. And you saw more of kind of there's a different way to show strength in a lot of those Japanese media.
I feel like American media, and it still does this to an extent, like sort of pushes the idea that there's only one way to be strong, right? Like, and so it is cool to see how other cultures view that sort of thing. For me with anime, I like the shows that I watch. It was all like basically Toonami stuff. I didn't have access to any other kind of anime really. So the lot
internet
of the
was
stuff
a great thing back then.
But even
opened up so many windows and doors. It wasn't until later that I discovered it.
I learned about a lot of stuff through the internet, but I don't think I ever really saw much of it until college, probably. But like Sailor Moon and stuff, like they so heavily Americanized that show.
They did.
That there were probably a ton more like Japanese references and stuff that I could have learned about if they hadn't done that. So it's kind of like, oh man, I kind of wish that they'd not. But then again, like they never would have brought the show over if that hadn't been done to it. Like, so I should just be grateful that we got it at all, honestly. And like Robotech was another one. Yeah, it's like,
I think this is just a transitionary period, though.
It was, yeah, it was, because that sort of media, like for it to get a foothold, it had to, for us to live in the world we live in today, where like I'll be behind a car at a stoplight and it's got a freaking Goku decal next to like the, baby on board sticker or whatever. Like, like that's how we get to this world, is you have to transition people into it that way. So,
Yeah.
so I don't regret it, but it's it's interesting.
Look where anime is today. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's become the new norm. Like if you don't watch anime, you're weird. Before, if you watch anime, you're weird.
You were super weird.
Like
super weird.
I remember like as a kid, like in middle school and stuff like that, I would go to like Suncoast and pick up like fan translated like VHS tapes that were like like it was just like these weird cool. Like so like I those going from that era to like now where it's so widely just loved and approved and like expressed across different mediums with not just anime, within the games and everything that we look at. It's so interesting to see the shift. And that's what I mean, how JRPGs has kind of like slowly progressed in like popularity, is that it's like it's given more opportunity for people to enjoy the medium and enjoy the stories that it tells. And JRPGs are just a kind of a fraction of what anime is too, because a lot of it they take from each other, because a lot of the same kind of concepts of stories, the same concepts of like friendship can rule all sometimes, or there's a lot of those ideas that kind of spill over, and it's, being like a Trails fan
protagonist.
Exactly. Like, you don't get protagonists like Rin without that anime like influence that comes from that like, the Japanese animation like style of
harem kind of
like
stuff.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, you get the harem in there, and you get the chosen hero, the chosen stoic, yeah, like all of these things. Trails is a really interesting example of a series that is very Japanese and has plenty of things that you can point to that are like, this is clearly influenced or straight out of Japanese culture. But it's also really cool how each of their different nations that you visit or whatever in the games have their own kind of unique cultures, unique in quotes, because it's like they are sort of based on historical or modern nations, like Calvert feels pretty clearly like an allegory for the US, with like all of the stuff that they're dealing with in that game. But they still have a really strong Japanese feel to them. And some people, you hear people that talk down about the tropes. They're like, oh, it's full of tropes, I can't stand it.
Or so anime.
So anime, and it's like an insult or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, it's fine. Like, I think that stuff's fun. Like, it's there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, there's like, is it goofy that like every female character, including the adults, want to get with 17-year-old Rin? Yeah, that's goofy. Like, that's not realistic. No teacher. I'm sorry. I know a lot of teachers. No teacher is interested in a 17-year-old boy. 17-year-old boys are gross. Let me tell you something about 17-year-old boys. They're gross. No grown woman wants anything to do with that.
Rin is a different breed of.
Rin's a special.
He's a special boy. He's a special
boy for sure. But anyway, you know what I mean. Like, there's tropes, but like, whatever. It's fun, and
it's great.
Who cares? Like, it's a good time.
I think you brought it up. I don't know if this is like a trope or whatever this is, Brandon, but you brought it up on Twitter once. It was just like, how many times they reference like alcohol and how the. And those who are not old enough did not drink that. That was like,
nobody underage drank anything alcoholic. Don't worry. It's like, I wasn't worried. I don't care.
I always wondered, because like they really go ham on that. Like it.
Right. And it's not even just the characters. It's like the narration of the game will be like, everyone partied well into the night, but don't worry, the underage kids didn't have anything. It didn't have any alcohol. Like,
actually, when I was in Japan, I saw some police officers like stop a few different like boys that looked like they're underage, and they were just kind of questioning them to make sure like that they're holding like, they have like open cans at most of the areas in Japan.
Sure they weren't drinking
so
alcohol.
They're really, I think, trying to patrol to make sure there's no underage drinking. So
I know
thing there.
I do know that it is a very big cultural thing. That's why I found it so mild spoiler, I guess, for Trails Through Daybreak. When they would talk about Van underage drinking, like they referenced it a few times throughout the course of the game. I'm like, okay, finally, some real life mischief, like somebody's getting up to bad stuff.
Because even
go Van.
Even like the most mischievous characters in like the Cold Steel eras or things like that, like even they were just like, I could be pretty bad, but I'm not that bad, guys.
Yeah, Ash Carbide.
Yeah, Ash was that I was thinking.
Actually, Ash did because he would hang out at bars and stuff.
It was implied, but I thought he was more talk than.
Yeah,
he may have been all talk. Yeah.
But I find because like it is definitely like a cultural thing. Because like in America, like we'd just be like we wouldn't talk about it, like or like it more.
And cigarette smoking too is really big, which I guess they haven't really talked about in many games I've seen.
Yeah,
but you don't see kids smoking. You just see adults who look all haggard and kind of gross.
Yeah, no. Once you
from a lifetime of nicotine. Yeah.
Once you hit 30 in any anime or Japanese, like like you are old and decrepit.
One of the defining moments of my life was when I realized I was older than Auron from Final Fantasy X.
Oh yeah,
that man looks ancient. He looks so old, and I'm like, how am I like 6 years older than him?
The way they design anyone, they design like
after
anyone
25.
over 30.
Yeah,
you're just downhill.
You're done.
Truly, like
all the 20, like it's refreshing with Trails Through Daybreak, and I promise not to be on trails all night. But in Trails Through Daybreak, how most of the characters are like adults, they're in their 20s, and like the 22-year-old is like, oh, I'm so old, and like everybody's gonna surpass me because they're all younger and better. It's like you're 22. Do people in Japan only live to be 30? Like, what's the life expectancy over there? Because you're making me think that it's young.
Well,
because 22. Just stop.
It just reminds me of like there's like I used to like watch a lot of sports anime when I was younger. And there was like they always take place in like junior high into high school, but there's always those characters in like the high school or junior high age that look like they're like literally a 45 to 50-year-old man. Which is just so funny.
But they're just like supposed to be like mature-ish for their age.
They're like 14.
They got held back 1 year.
Yeah.
They're so ancient.
They're like 7 feet tall and like look like a 60-year-old. Yeah,
they look like they've been part of like the Yakuza for years, and they're just like they've been in so many fights and like just are ready. Like they look rough. They look like life has taken a toll on them, and they're just in like high school.
That's another.
Are you going to bring up the high school thing?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so many JRPGs, whenever it's set like in a contemporary time, it's all evolved around high schoolers.
It is.
And that's also very much a cultural thing because in Japan, like once you finish high school, you're off to college and the workforce. It's just how grueling, the workforce, their lives are at that point. They always kind of reminisce on the glory days, right? That's why I think you just see so much media around high school, which I know a lot of JRPG fans in the West are like, could they please be in college or adults? But it's likely not going to happen too much.
It's like romanticization of youth, and that and that's kind of a thing in America, but definitely not to the extent. Not to that extent, because
it used to be an older, I think, media like. You peak at high school if you're like the quarterback in the college football team and the cheerleader or something. But it's been extended because I think, especially in the US, like I feel like people are maturing in a way, or they're not becoming adults later in life.
Right. It's taking longer to like the milestones that our grandparents hit when they were 20. Like they've got a house and 3 kids by the time they're 19 or whatever. Like we're not doing that, so we've kind of moved the timeline back.
I mean, look at us with all our toys.
I was just thinking the other day, not really related, but I was just thinking the other day, like I am a very different adult than like my dad. Like the stuff, like I remember my dad being the age I am now. Like I was still living at home. I was a teenager, and I like, this is a different world. This would not fit in with his like go to work, come home, sit on the couch, watch television and work on his truck or something and then go to bed, and that was it. Like that was it. And
lives were so much different back then. It's crazy.
I know
how things have changed just in a generation.
I saw a picture of like the Cheers cast and showing like how old were they when it was like when the first season started, and like they were like 30, like some of them are like 35 years old, but they look like they're like 45, 48
the whole
years
age
old.
thing is so wild. Like, how people
just,
think that, you know, they were older.
Some of it's the hair. Some of it's the hairstyles. Like,
true.
They never change their hairstyles, and so we associate them with older people. But like that's just how
the styling was just old looking.
Yeah, so, it was just very old
but
looking.
But still, it's still a little uncanny. Some photos, like,
interesting.
Oh, they were 20 back then.
Good. Yeah,
but I remember even being in my 20s. Like my mid to late 20s, being like, I really wish JRPGs would feature protagonists that are like older than 21. I think Cloud was 21, and he was the oldest protagonist that we had ever had in a Final Fantasy. 20, or was he 22? 21. He was 21. Aerith was 22. So that would like, that's nuts that's the oldest protagonist we had in a Final Fantasy until 16. No, I don't know how old Noctis was in 15, but like basically like it's been very, very young people have always been the protagonists. And I'm like, even as a relatively young person, I was like, you know, maybe we try having a 35-year-old be the main character or a 40-year-old and see how it goes. Like,
I feel like a lot of Westerners, we like to grow with our media. So we see our media, you know, stay in the same place, but we're advancing. It's kind of there's that kind of weird feeling.
Yeah, that's so true.
Well, it can be taken to the extreme too, where a game is literally changed to accommodate that very thing. Like the original Nier, when it came out in Japan, and you know, starred a like barely out of his teens protagonist, pretty boy. And when they brought the game to America, they changed him to like a grizzled middle-aged man.
Just great.
And I'm like, and I'm be honest with you, I think I prefer the grizzled middle-aged man Nier. Like, I just like that whole thing. It's like, that's cool.
I thought that was refreshing. I haven't played it, but from what I've heard, I just find it hilarious.
Yeah,
it's very funny that was what they thought. Okay, well, this game's going to sell better if we make a very unattractive old man be, instead of this pretty boy male main character, let's make him just a disgusting old man.
I know.
That's what these.
That's
what Americans
that's so funny.
want. They want to get this Japanese crap. Give him this nasty old.
I think they listen to X play a little bit too much.
But like honestly, like I think the biggest JRPG in my opinion to really hone in on Japanese culture as a whole is Persona. I think like Persona like wears it on its sleeve in how it's written, the things it shows you, the gods that it plays into, like the different types of things that use for Persona. I think like Persona 5 especially, like for me, well, I like the whole idea of Persona 4 and 5, where you have these kids that are living without their parents within high school perspective. And that's a very Japanese, like you see a lot in anime, you see that a lot in other things, is that like, because in Japan, I guess high school is optional. So a lot of kids end up either not going to high school or going straight into the workforce, or they'll go to high school and then they'll live away from their parents and they'll like do something else. So if they get into a specific type of high school,
because it's a different thing, right? You have to like try to get into
exactly.
High school.
Like you don't go to your local high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't go to your own like local high school. You like, I mean, you have those options, but like a lot of kids want to get into the
best options.
Yeah, because like it's all about testing. Like if you can get into the best high school, you'll get into the best college and things like that. So it's like
you'll get the best job. It's all prestige driven.
Exactly. And so with Persona, like there's that whole idea of like these kids that live alone and they're going through these things, and especially in Persona 5, where like you have this boy who's called out like this like bad politician on doing something evil, but then he gets sent away he gets punished for it because like you're causing a scene. Even though you're trying to help somebody, you're still causing a scene and making things look bad. So it looks bad on the family. And so like there's a whole like really intricate like thought process for them there, is that like, sure, yeah, you are doing something good, but ultimately you're doing something bad for the whole of the family by creating this kind of like view of us now that you've done something like this. And so that way, like it's something that like we wouldn't understand as Americans if you have nothing, like to you, you're just seeing that, you're like, why would he get punished for that? Like he called out this creep, like, and then like, so like it's very interesting. Like
the concept of shame and like saving face was something that took me a while to understand when I was younger.
Yeah. Like even to this day, it's still like, it's something
I still struggle with it. I'm like
a little bit. That's true.
Yeah.
I'm like, like, you know, that it's not actually bad that he stopped this predator, right? Like, you know that it's good, right? Like,
like, and it's inherently a good thing.
It's a struggle because it's like, you don't want to be culturally insensitive, but at the same time, it's like, well, I mean, come on. Persona 3, 4, and 5 you know, really nail that the high school anime aesthetic, right? Yes. Interesting thing is like Persona 2, which I don't have really much experience with at all, but like that one was one of those rare games that I'm pretty sure was like adults in like the workforce, wasn't it? Like, wasn't the main character, didn't she work for like a newspaper or something? Wasn't that am I remembering that right?
I think that's the case. I never really played.
What's her name? Maya. I vaguely remember. I just remember she had
I could picture her artwork.
Yes,
she had like heart boobs. Do you remember the heart boob outfit?
Yes.
Heart boobs.
Yeah, the heart over the boob. That was the thing that stuck out to my young brain. Yeah,
the signature heart boobs. There you go.
But I'm pretty sure she was like a newspaper reporter.
I think she did like work in like.
So it'd be great if they want to announce Persona 6 at the game show or the Game Awards. I think the rumor is that they're going to be announcing
That's what the rumor.
If they want to have it not be in a high school again, this is
they can't. That's why they made what do you call Fantasio Metaphor Fantasio.
That's coming out soon too.
That's their way of getting away from high school, but
of not just doing high school. So we have another series that isn't just high school, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I hope it does well.
Yeah,
I think it'll do good, and I think it's gonna be great. Like, just look at it. Like, there's no way that's not great.
I want to play it, but it's also like 100-hour game. From what they were interviewing the director, and he's like, "Yeah, it's 100 hours," and I'm just like, "Great, okay." Well, I mean,
if it's 100 good hours, I don't care.
I mean,
like Persona 5 was 100 hours, and I did not care.
I platinumed that, or I completed that game. So like
Persona 5 Royal was 120 hours. It was 20 more hours, and I loved it.
And that's the one I completed completely. And so like I love that game. So I mean, I'm gonna.
Did you guys play the base game first and then redid Royal?
I did play the base game.
Yeah, I played the base game back like when it first came out. And then last year,
hours. I'm always tempted with Atlas titles just to wait.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I know.
Wait for the definitive version for the most part is a good advice. And
I didn't do that with Free Fat Metaphor, but
no, I know, and you're really looking forward to that one, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, get it and play it. But like, with Persona 5, I was super into the series. Like, there's no way that I was gonna wait, even though I knew it was inevitable that they were gonna put out, you know, whatever color they were gonna call it.
Yeah,
which they didn't. They called it Royal, but that's fine.
I want them to bring Persona 4 to the same treatment as Persona 3 that they did.
They're saying that's
a rumor
was
too.
It 2026? They're saying that,
because that's like
might be hidden.
That's a game I want to replay because I loved it. But I also know that I'm like, maybe they're gonna do something with that. So, But yeah, that's a little off topic there. But Persona, I think, like really, really kind of gets into that. It uses a lot of different Japanese cultural like aspects to it. Especially
what's interesting though is just how big Persona 5 was. Like, outside the JRPG sphere. So there is some acceptance, you know, of these kind of, you know, very Japanese cultural things and all these tropes that you see. I guess it has to be packaged a certain way for it to be okay,
acceptable for the mainstream. Well, and it's funny that you hear people talk about the death of the turn-based JRPG. It's like some of the freaking biggest games have been turned. Like, what are you talking about? Like I know Final Fantasy 16 was an action game. I'm sorry, I get it. Like, I know it's upsetting to you, but like, there's so many turn-based games, guys.
I know,
so many.
Well, because like I think there was like so long a period where there weren't really a lot of turn-based games, and like Square was completely moving away from turn-based. So like there was like really no options minus like the one Persona 5 game that we'd get, or like you know, Dragon Quest every once in a while. But then all of a sudden, the last like so many years, there's been just an influx of like just ton of JRPGs.
More than we can keep up with.
I know, I can't keep up with all of them.
I guess that people complaining back in the day got through to them because, you know, I mean, the expected turnaround time from starting development to putting a game out, like, yeah, I guess it worked. So the moral of the story, complain on the internet,
but it works.
I wonder if that's going to shift like Square to move Final Fantasy into more like JRPG.
Well, it's already failed from a sales perspective, they've said.
Yeah,
the most recent ones. So I don't know what they're going to do.
I wonder how much of that is truly a failure versus unrealistic
expectations. Yeah,
I think both. Yeah. So making it just on the PS5, I think, was a mistake.
Making it exclusive is not does not benefit Square in any way, and
not for something they put a lot of that high of a budget in time.
Yeah,
it didn't make sense.
It makes no sense for that.
So like Final Fantasy 16 is an interesting game to touch on for this topic because it seemed to be very explicitly a non-Japanese take on JRPG as a genre. Like, I know Yoshi P was the one who kind of famously said that he considered JRPG to be an insult or like condescending or something.
Back in the day.
And I don't know whether he still feels that it is, but like he seems to be one that doesn't like the designation and doesn't like maybe that style of game. So I mean, I know like he would rather take things in a more Western direction.
Yeah, he seems very interested in that,
which is fine, but I don't know, like something about Final Fantasy, like we were saying near the beginning of this segment, like there's nothing explicitly Japanese in the Final Fantasy games, but you feel a lot of the influence in most of the games. In 16, I don't think I felt almost any influence, like a little bit from some of the broader story points, like, you know, I don't want to get into spoilers, but some of the broader story points felt kind of more typical Final Fantasy.
The further you get into it, the more it shows itself, I think.
But it did really seem to be like it wanted to be a Game of Thrones-esque, high fantasy, Western high fantasy adventure.
Very dark and gritty, kind of miserable.
Miserable, except for Uncle Byron. I
loved
Uncle Byron so hard. I love Uncle Byron.
He's one of my favorites.
If he wasn't in that game, I don't know. I think that would have lowered my opinion on it a whole point at least. He was so great.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sid's great too. Yeah.
Sid was amazing.
I just find it really interesting that they went that direction, that they let Yoshi P go in that direction for that game. I know he is helming their biggest success, right? Is Final Fantasy 14 is like their biggest ongoing cash cow. People can't get enough of that game. They won't stop talking about it. I love it. So sure, throw him a mainline, single player Final Fantasy. But I kind of hope, and I don't know how you guys feel, I kind of hope they move to somebody else for whatever 17.
A different creative direction would be great, honestly. I think
we
need some sort of refresh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think they should shy away from like the realistic graphics and maybe get a little bit more like what do you call kind of like whether it's like a cell shaded type thing. It's like more of like something stylized. Yeah, like a stylized graphics that like ages well. It's not as expensive.
That's the thing, right? Like that's the key, is they have these projections for this game. They want it to sell so much because it cost so much. It's like, take advantage of different techniques to make the game not so expensive. Like
it doesn't all have to be Final Fantasy 7 remake or rebirth or things like that. Like it doesn't have to be like so excessively like just the best everything. So like just you can do.
They just focus too much on the details that I don't think paid out well. Long run.
They need to be better. I think maybe they should speak with Takahashi a little bit about how to balance budgets with.
There needs to be some manager. I don't know. Someone helps.
Takahashi is a man who learned that.
He learned it the hard way.
He learned it the hard way, but he's got it. He's got it down.
Yeah, like now he's figured it out. And that's actually like another series, like Xeno series, that does really well with like kind of skirting the lines of like it takes place in like a sci-fi setting. It's like it's very like not Japanese, but it wears its Japanese influence on its sleeves at the same time.
Especially the Xenosaga games, like you have some like explicitly Japanese characters. Your main character is one. Like it's and then especially in, I think, Xenosaga 2, where you go to her home planet and you see like her brother, who is just Seaton from Xenogears.
Basically,
like, I don't know why they did that to me. I'm like, come on, that's Seaton from Xenogears.
They did it on
Don't
purpose.
Do this to me.
They did it on purpose.
I know they did. And then they put little Faye in there in that, like,
I know,
the very end of episode 1. I was like,
they're just tugging.
Anyway, that's not.
There's so much heart, I think, in a lot of JRPGs, and I think that was one of the things I was missing in Final Fantasy 16. I think they tried it. It just didn't really land quite for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's...
And I feel like it's because they were trying to speak a language, not literally, but trying to speak a language that they don't speak naturally, that they're not comfortable with. Like they were trying to make a game. And I say this as somebody that liked Final Fantasy 16. I don't dislike it. I like it. I feel like they were trying to do something that they weren't accustomed to, they weren't comfortable with. And it didn't pay off for them.
Yeah. I think it's good that they tried it. Like I definitely, I think that's something that should happen. Like you shouldn't just stay, in the safe spot. Like if there's no innovation, it's just going to be,
And who knows, maybe from this experiment, this branching out, they'll bring some elements of that worked into what they do next and incorporate it with some of the stuff that is tried and true, tested stuff that they know is going to work, and give us something even better, even more unique than what they've given us before. Like, that's, to me, that the Japaneseness of Final Fantasy is one of its most appealing things. Like I've said before that I love Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah, 15's very
the most hated game in the series. I stand by it because I just I guess I don't know. 13 is kind of going through a little bit of a renaissance right now. People are loving it on Twitter.
That's for sure. They have rumors now of it coming
remastered.
Yeah.
Though they mentioned something about random enemy encounters, which didn't actually happen. So everyone's a little skeptical of those.
Well, if you play it on the Xbox, it is already technically remastered.
True. They upscaled it.
They upscaled it to 4K, and I think the textures are better and everything like that. So,
but 15. The thing about 15 for me is it's like that world is so interesting, and I cannot imagine a world like that coming out of a Western studio. I just
even
can't.
Though it was based off of Western,
even though it was like based on I don't even know if you can necessarily even say that, because it's just like modern. It's just kind of based on modernity. So you could say that there's similar things in Japan or other European. Like there's some cities in the game that I would say are like there's one that's very like Venice. And there's big cities that you could easily say are like Tokyo, Insomnia.
It had like a lot, I think, like a French feel to it to me for some reason, like a South of France.
I was just thinking the driving the cars and kind of that road sort of environment that's very American.
Well, that part,
the like buddy road trip, trip movie kind of feel. Definitely an American trope, but just taking that kind of almost stereotype and putting it in that setting, that is like one of the most Final Fantasy things you can do, in my opinion. Like that's so JRPG to me.
The power of friendship, man.
And the power of friendship in there too. I was bawling. I was ugly crying at the end of that game. I was ugly crying, and I love that game. My wife, she was there. I was ugly crying, and it was just so beautiful, and I loved it so much. And everybody that hates it, you break my heart a little bit.
Did you watch the movies and stuff before?
I did.
Okay. Yeah. I still need to play this, so I'm all prepped. What do you have to do before actually playing the game?
Yeah.
I mean, so this is an aside, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but there's people that are like, well, Final Fantasy 15 is not good because the story is not complete. You have to watch a movie and watch an anime series and do all this stuff in order to understand the story. It's like, you don't, though. Like, I mean, that stuff's cool, and it definitely fleshes out the world, but like the point of Final Fantasy 15 is you are basically in this one kid's perspective while all of this crazy big stuff is happening in his world, and he doesn't have a front row seat to it. He's just kind of reacting to it, and it gives you this like feeling of powerlessness, and then when you overcome it in the end, you feel even more powerful. It's just a different way of telling a story. I definitely recommend the supplementary material if you're interested in the world, because it's very cool, like very interesting stuff, especially the anime, just to get a little more backstory on the four guys. Like, that's very cool.
Well, the buddy story is what I'm most excited for.
Oh yeah,
I love my
it's
bromances. So
it's beautiful bromances in that game.
Yeah,
it's just top tier. The character development in that game was like so good, and that's probably also one of my like biggest critiques of the game, is that like there were some characters that like just would disappear and come back, and like, or like things are, and then they brought it back in like DLC and like what they were doing, but I felt like they should have just had that all in the game itself, in the base game, to give you a big to give you an understanding to why certain things happen, or like why certain people felt a certain way towards like the end and things like that. So like there was a little, storytelling, I think, and that's something that's, I think, since 13 Square was trying to like, I think they've been just struggling with how to tell their stories in a certain way. Because I think 16 had that same kind of like slight problems here and there.
15 had kind of a scatter shot. You're right. I mean, that's a fair criticism. Like, the DLC of 15 is a little problematic, because it's like, why didn't you put this in the main game? I still would argue that like it didn't need the DLC to be a complete game. Like, I felt like I haven't played much. I played some of the DLC. I actually haven't played all of it, because it took so long for it to come out. But like I was, if that game had ended and just that was it, I would have been just 100% satisfied. So, but I mean, to each their own. Like, it's not an unfair criticism. It's just one that doesn't.
I never like it when they lock lore, character development, story, and DLC. And string it
generally, generally not a good practice.
Was not a big fan
for,
of
I think,
that.
this genre, especially
to give to defend the director, and I don't know his name. He was given a really difficult task of taking the mess that Tetsuya Nomura left him.
It's true.
And try to turn it into a game after 12 years or whatever.
Yeah, that game did not start on its best feet. So like the fact that it ended the way it did, and like it was a complete game for the most part. And I mean, I platinumed that game as well. So like I was really into it. Like I loved that game. All the characters are amazing. I actually enjoyed the battle system a lot too in that game too, for an action combat game. It was a lot of fun. It was like a little bit more fun, I think, than 16.
16 fun. It's very hard sentence put together.
I felt like the combat was very kind of samey. Some of that was on me. I didn't really experiment because I found a combination of skills that worked on everything.
I did the same.
So I didn't branch out. I just kind of stuck with what worked. And I guess you could say I made my own experience worse by doing that. But like, also, I don't know, design it so that I don't do that, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so we've talked a lot about Japanese influence. We've gone on some fun tangents. Anything else you all want to mention before we bid everyone adieu? I
feel like we may need a part 2 at some point. So if anyone in the comments want to drop some suggestions of other kind of Japanese influences that they've noticed in JRPGs, we could definitely maybe touch on them in another episode.
In fact, let's make that our question of the day.
All right.
In this hypothetical part 2 of Japanese influences in JRPGs, what games and or topics would you like to see us cover? Let us know in either the YouTube comments or send us an email, jrpgpursuit@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We definitely read all the comments. We're not as quick at responding to them as we would like to be, but we're all very, very busy, and we promise at the very least we're reading them. Yes. Hopefully we can respond to everybody in time. So we thank you for your patience with that and for listening. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah, this is a long one.
Yeah,
you've listened to us ramble for like almost 2 hours. So I'm
almost 2 hours.
If you're still here, then we love you.
Kudos.
Yeah, you're amazing. So Dala, where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, right now you can find me on Twitter at Dalla, DALLAH 998.
All right. And Emily, tell us, where can we find you?
We can find me over at Orperology here on YouTube or some other social medias like Twitter and Instagram.
I am on YouTube at Just the Gems and on Twitter and everywhere else at just my name, Brandon Johnson. Look me up. You'll figure it out. So thank you all once again for joining us for this very long Japanese-centric episode. We had a blast. Well, I did. I can't speak for. I don't want to speak for you guys. I had a great time. Okay,
it was
good.
great.
Dala, nobody asked you. Get out of here.
All right.
I was kidding, Dala. No, come back. Come back.
Oh.
The dejectedness. Yes, thank you all, everybody, so much for listening, for putting up with us and our tomfoolery. And until next time, bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.